What would happen if there's a full-scale war between the One Piece verse and the Tower of God verse? Honestly, while I do think that Baam versus Luffy could be interesting, Tower of God versus One Piece is a complete mismatch. I'm gonna compare the two verses side by side in terms of scale, destructive capacity, power system versatility, hacks, tier comparison, and more, so we can figure out which verse truly outscales the other. And if you think you already know the answer, I wouldn't be so sure about that. Stay till the end to decide. What makes this even more interesting is that Tower of God is actually pretty hard to scale accurately. The tower is so endless and mysterious, we've only seen a fraction of its true extent. But you see, the confirmed feats and principles of its power system are already more than enough to show just how broken and overpowered this verse is. Yes, the mystery only implies that the actual ceiling might be even higher. Now, for this battle between the two verses, we'll assume that powers work outside their universes. Basically meaning, Haki interacts with Shinsu and Devil Fruits aren't nerfed by Shinsu. Let's first quickly break down the power systems of the two verses. Starting with One Piece, we have Haki, the manifestation of one's willpower. There are three types. Observation Haki is about sensing the presence, strength, and emotions of others. It allows you to see your opponent's aura. Advanced users like Luffy, Katakuri, and Shanks can also see multiple seconds into the future. Armament Haki is about creating invisible armor for defense or coding attacks for offense. And Conqueror's Haki allows users to exert their willpower onto others. Advanced users can infuse their attacks with Conqueror's Haki to split the heavens without physical contact. Then we have Devil Fruits, which are manifestations of people's dreams. There are also three types. Logia fruits allow the user to embody elements like light, magma, ice, and smoke. Paramecia fruits give users superhuman abilities like Whitebeard's Gura Gura no Mi, which can create earthquakes and tsunamis. And Zoan fruits allow transformation into animals. Ancient Zoans let you transform into ancient animals, whereas mythical Zoans let you transform into mythical entities. Luffy's fruit is based on Nika, the warrior of liberation, while Sengoku's fruit is based on the Great Buddha. Now, considering this information about Haki and Devil Fruits, it's safe to say everything goes in the One Piece verse, but there's still a limit to how strong you can be in One Piece. Don Chinjiao allegedly split an ice continent in his prime. Law's puncture will drilled deep through Onigashima and the landmass below. I mean, Whitebeard was tilting islands left and right at Marineford. Considering all this, the high-end destructive capacity is between island level, multi-island level, or potentially small country level for the absolute strongest attacks. Speed-wise, strong characters can react to light speed attacks like Kizaru's lasers, which means that One Piece characters have superhuman quick reaction time. Now we move on to Tower of God. Let's start with the scale. The tower is at least 11 times the size of Earth. You can think of it less as a tower and more of a series of stacked worlds on top of each other. Each floor is comparable to North and South America combined. Just let that sink in. Traveling between floors is like traveling between separate continents or dimensions. And then we have Shinsu. Comparing Shinsu to something like Kai from Dragon Ball, Chakra from Naruto, or even Nen from Hunter x Hunter is an understatement. This is because Shinsu is like the tower itself, literally translated as divine water. Controlling it is the basis of power. It's the air, it's the water, it's the medium for light and sound. Unlike the more defined categories of Haki or Devil Fruits, Shinsu manipulation is fluid and potentially limitless. Only bound by the user's talent, imagination, skill, and the specific rules or contracts governing its use on each floor. Let me give you a few examples of Shinsu manipulation. You can direct Shinsu for attacks, defense, or movement. You can compress Shinsu to increase impact or create barriers. Shinsu can even be imbued with specific properties like fire, ice, and electricity, or create more complex techniques. So, as you can see, Shinsu is incredibly versatile, more versatile than both Haki and Devil Fruits combined, because Shinsu can replicate almost any effect imaginable. I'm talking about elemental attacks far more powerful than Logia scale, like potent healing, teleportation, wide area illusions, sleep inducement, and potentially limitless esoteric abilities. To add to this, it also works like aura, just like how Haki works like aura, because the stronger you are, the more resistant you become to Shinsu-based effects. Next, let's talk about the strong characters and their feats in Tower of God. There are floor guardians, also known as administrators. They're basically gods of their respective floors, omnipotent and immortal in their domains. They embody the floor itself, set its rules, and control Shinsu absolutely within their domain. Next, we have irregulars. They're like wild cards since they originally came from outside the tower. Baam, Uruk, Enryu, to name a few, are all irregulars. Because they came from the outside, they're not bound by the many rules of the tower, and therefore are the only ones who can potentially harm the administrators. For example, when Enryu appeared on the floor of death, he killed an immortal administrator using spears made out of Shinsu. This is a very chilling feat, and you won't find anything of this level in One Piece, because not only did he kill an immortal, he killed an immortal in their own domain where they had absolute control. That's like if Luffy defeated and killed Kaido on Wano Island, but Kaido is supposedly immortal and physically bound by the rules of the world that he cannot lose on his own turf. If I were to comment on it as a member of the r/power scaling subreddit, I'd say that it's a feat of conceptual destruction against a nigh omnipotent entity within its own domain. This is important because if the One Piece verse throws hands with the Tower of God verse, all One Piece characters would basically be irregulars. Though just because they're irregulars doesn't mean they're strong. I mean, just look at fan favorite Rachel. Even if they're not as restricted as regulars, the tower's environment itself will still nerf them. Let me also point out that many of the high-ranked irregulars have been around for tens of thousands of years, so even if it's Luffy himself who enters the tower as an irregular, he won't be able to grow at a higher rate than Baam, which means that he'll ultimately be defeated. To give you an example of what a high-ranked irregular can do, we have Gustong Pobido. On the floor of death, he casually erased the memories of Baam and his companions from the minds of every single inhabitant on the floor. This wasn't just a localized mind wipe, it was a precise large-scale mental or maybe even soul manipulation feat across potentially millions inhabiting a continent-sized floor. I'd say if you believe the theory that Emu wiped out everyone's memories of the Void Century using their own abilities, then Gustong Pobido's feat is at least on the same level as Emu, but it is most definitely in a higher tier. And even if that's true, Gustong Pobido isn't even among the top 10 strongest in the tower. Speaking of strongest, the most powerful entity in the entire tower is Phantominum. He's an Axis user who can manipulate everything, just like how an author can manipulate anything in the story they're writing. Now, let's put One Piece and Tower of God side by side. Starting with scale and destructive capacity, One Piece peaks at island to country level destruction. But in Tower of God, we have 1,000 high rankers who can pull off the same level of feats as many of the strongest One Piece characters. Then we have Enryu, who can kill an immortal within their domain, and Phantominum, who can rewrite reality. And we haven't even talked about Sahart, the king of the tower. After scaling, we have power system versatility and hacks. Haki is the manifestation of one's willpower, while devil fruits are manifestations of people's dreams. But Shinsu is the fabric of reality itself, and it has theoretically limitless applications. Yes, in One Piece, you can't really use the abilities of another devil fruit, but in Tower of God, you can create similar abilities. Just look at Baam literally replicating other people's techniques using Shinsu. Plus, while One Piece hacks like Law's Room or Sugar's Touch are potent, they are localized and require specific conditions. Tower of God hacks, on the other hand, operates on a grander scale. Next is durability. In One Piece, the ceiling is Zoan Endurance and Conqueror's Haki Coating. But the high rankers in Tower of God have immortality contracts or specialized defensive items. Plus, how can One Piece durability handle attacks that erase existence or manipulate space directly? Finally, we have tier comparison. Where do One Piece's strongest characters fit in the tower? A Yonko or Admiral with their island or country level power and Haki mastery can reasonably be considered high ranker level. But they would definitely struggle significantly against the top 100, let alone the top 10 family heads or irregulars like Sahart, Uruk, and Enryu. I'd say One Piece's top tiers simply aren't in the same league. They lack the scale, the hacks resistance, and the raw power output to compete at that level. And the thing is, the gap is fundamental. The top tiers of Tower of God simply can't be beaten by the top tiers of One Piece. This is why it's embarrassing. Did this breakdown convince you? How do you personally scale these verses? Let me know in the comments below what other verses I should do next.